Thank you for watching. My name is Glen Morgan, and this is another episode of We the Govern. Thank you so much for joining me. Feel free to share this video with others if you think they need to hear some of this information as well. And don't forget to leave a comment down below if you think I have completely missed the boat with this video today. Now, the topic that I have today is going to be one that's kind of in the news frequently, which is how much tax dollars are squandered in Washington state on DEI programs. And for those of you who have been living under a rock and not familiar with what that means, DEI stands for diversity, inclusion, and equity. I should say equity and inclusion. I usually say DIE because essentially that's where all good ideas go to die, and it's a terrible destruction to every institution in which these programs are implemented. But nevertheless, the big question is how much of your tax dollars are going to be wasted on these programs right now? And of course, anytime you look into something like this, because of the political nature, there's just a lot of baggage and exposing the truth about how much of your taxpayer dollars have been squandered and wasted in this manner, using this justification all over the place with kind of the indoctrination and brainwashing programs, the very racist operations that they run there. But it's good to know how much money you've spent. Now, if you haven't done so already, hit the like and subscribe button down below. Only takes a few seconds of your time. Greatly appreciated. Helps improve the visibility of our videos. And if you want to see more like this, tell me what are the topics you want me to cover down in the comment section down below. Now, essentially, the reason why I'm doing this video is there was a report, it was actually a request by some Republicans in the legislature late in 2004, and they essentially, especially if you sit on the Appropriations Committee, you can have state agencies reach out and you can get information. A lot of times this is used as a way to collect information about, are we spending too much money on public records? By God, that's we can't spend money on public records. It's about the only thing the agencies ever want to save money on. Or how much money are we spending on security or buildings, or could be very mundane requests. But in this case, the Republicans, because we were hearing about it with the Trump administration coming in, they wanted to ask this request and have agencies, all the state agencies, come back and tell us how much money are you actually spending on DEI programs. It's great requests. It was a good attempt to get some information. And of course, basically every agency in theory, if they were going to respond to this, they would come back and give that information to them. Now, as would be expected, since it was originally a Republican request, and we do live in Washington state where the agencies are completely infected with all kinds of terrible ideas, and wasting taxpayer dollars is basically a sport, they clearly ignored this request. They didn't want to get back to it. Nobody at Ecology, nobody at DSHS or OSPI. This is the last thing they want to expose, is what percentage of their budget's actually squandered on programs like this. There's a lot of grifting operations tied into DEI, and a lot of people make a living off of presenting these very racist programs and brainwashing efforts inside these state agencies. So the last thing they want to do is actually expose just how much it is. But there were some that actually did respond, and it was interesting to see which ones did. Mostly it was the colleges in Washington state who are proud of how much of your taxpayer dollars they waste on this program, and they were very happy to tell us how much they spent. There were also a couple of smaller government entities that did respond. I will link to this actual report down below if you want to read for it or read it for yourself. But I found it pretty interesting. And just so you know, these numbers are based on the 2024-2025 budget, which we're in right now as I'm doing this video. So they would have already been about halfway through the budget by the time they were compiling these numbers. This is what it looked like right here. It's not super exciting. It was only 2 pages because, like I said, most of these agencies completely ignored them and blew them off. Again, Ecology, L&I, DSHS, where OSPI, where a lot more money is wasted, Department of Transportation, a lot of these guys blew them off. But there were some that responded. And let's just go into some of the highlights of those who did. All told, they admitted that they spent $82,039,000 over 2 years, so roughly about $41 million a year on DEI programs in the current budget right now. Now, the real amount is obviously substantially higher than this. I mean, quite a bit higher. It's probably at least 2 zeros to this, and that would be getting closer to, but of course it also depends on how you define DEI, which to be fair, as they pointed out in some of their comments, there wasn't necessarily a common way of defining it. If you worked for an agency, they would say, well, we only have 2 people with that title, so we'll only include their salaries. We won't include all the brainwashing programs that we put together or the junket trips, so we take everybody down to Las Vegas to do a diversity, inclusion, equity summit or something like that. And then some of them would be better, and they would include that information. So there's really not a consistent way that it looks like they responded on this. But nevertheless, it gives you something to start with. And obviously, every penny of this money was wasted, and the real amount is substantially higher. The highest amount that was reported by any individual state-funded entity here was University of Washington. No surprise. But to their credit, and I'm not going to throw them entirely under the bus because unlike the other agencies, listen, these guys were proud. They wanted to tell you exactly how much money they wasted. And for them, they wasted $62,612,000 self-reported on the DEI programs, including this year. So $31 million roughly each year. Very proud of it. If you're wondering why your kid's going into debt for life, going up to UW, part of that cost was this money that got wasted. It's not the only cost. And to be fair, it is probably a lot more than this, but at least they were willing to come back with a number and justify why they provided that number, and good for them. They are the winner in the DEI program, at least as far as what they admitted so far. Then you had Washington State University, go Cougs. They admitted spending $9.5 million. And not to be outdone, just not far away, you had Eastern. They said they spent $5,165,000. You had Western, which of course I've done before. They're the infamous college that issues ghost classes and credits for students, and they're very good at covering up their own fraud. They admitted, at least so far, to have spent $2 million, a little over $2 million. Now, listen, if you are at all remotely familiar with Western, you know that number is a complete lie. It's substantially more than that, but that's okay. That's where they start, and I'm sure they've got a story as to why it's only that high. This one is the shocking one for me. Evergreen State College is essentially the poster child for DEI long before it was cool, and it has been that poster child for decades. And so this is a complete lie here, $218,000. I don't know why they thought that was a realistic number to apply. You got to add a 0 to at least be close. But anyway, that's what they said. It's just very, very funny that they said that number because the whole college is really a DEI adventure. But at least these guys came back to us, and this is what they said. And I will point out that when you look at this, obviously $82 million is still a decent amount of money. And they've wasted it. The real dollar amount is substantially higher, of course, but it is important to know that that's what they're saying. And sure, we know they're lies, but we can start with a lie and then seek the truth. And that's really what I want to point out here. I mean, people get frustrated that they're lying. And, listen, our state government lies to us all the time. I mean, if you want to know what's a lie, just look at what the public information officer says at the agency. It's pretty much always a lie. It's certainly a narrative spin that they have to send out. So lying is just a way of life. That's how our government treats us. They've been treating us that way for a long, long time, long before I was born. But it's important to necessarily realize that at least, while they may be lying to us, they're giving us a number to start with. And as we dig into this stuff a little bit deeper in the future, we'll find the agencies that tried to hide it from us by not reporting it or underreporting what they did say. But let me give you just an idea. I mean, this could be DEI, it could be some other program that you're looking at. There are things you can do to make a difference when it comes to this kind of waste, and I think it's important to look at this and recognize it. Number one, you can find a local government budget where you live. Now, I wouldn't restrict yourself to DEI expenditures, but you can find that government budget and you can dig into the itemized expenses. I've talked about this with the DOJ Washington training classes. Dig into those expenditures, whether it's the credit card receipts or the vendor contracts. There's a lot to find. You will find the waste. It doesn't mean that it's fraud, but find the waste, the stuff that nobody cares about. And then share those results widely in your community so people know this is what they are wasting your taxpayer dollars on. And then be prepared now for the next budget that's coming up. And this is very timely, and I'll explain why. Because this has got to be first thing in your head. You're asking me, Glenn, why the heck am I actually going to bother doing something like that? These guys don't listen anyway. Now, they may not, but here's a way to make them listen a little bit more. Every single local government in Washington state, to one degree or another, is going to have money problems. If they don't have it openly right now, they're just trying to hide it from you next time. They're short of funds. I'm going to say, I'll put that in air quote. They are short funds, and they know it, and it's not fun for them. The bureaucrats and the politicians, though, inevitably, they only provide two potential answers to this situation. Now, I've only seen this a few hundred times. Maybe people have been around longer, have seen it more, but it is the only two answers that they ever seem to be able to find, which is increase taxes or reduce public safety. They want to increase taxes. Every Democrat wants to increase taxes, but sometimes you'll have a few people that are reluctant because they'll know how much that hurts their community, and they'll know how much people are already paying. And so what the bureaucrats will do is they'll come back and they'll say, listen, because again, usually these politicians are too lazy to dig through the itemized expenses of their own budgets, or they're busy and they don't have time. And this is where the work that you've done in your community can make a big difference. And they tell the bureaucrats, no, we got to find cuts. Well, bureaucrats are lazy, and they're generally corrupted in this whole process too. They don't want to make that much work in. Really, they want them to have taxes. So they just come back and they pick something that the community cares about. And almost the only thing that most people in the community generally care about is public safety. And it's not that there aren't other things that they do care about, but usually it's public safety. And so what they do is the bureaucrats will say, sorry, we gotta eliminate our police force or cut it down so that even though you're in a crime wave right now, boy, we sure don't want more police out there. Let's cut them. And they know that by doing this, they can motivate more people to say, well, I don't want to have a less safe community, so maybe those increased taxes, which is what the bureaucrats and the politicians really wanted, they don't look so bad now. That's kind of the idea. Now, remember then, you'll basically now have a much better answer than what the bureaucrats or the politicians have, because you'll have already spent some time digging into this budget, and you'll already be aware of where the fraud's a little bit hard to find, but you'll at least know where the waste and the garbage programs are, so that you can lay out an option for them to get those cuts that the bureaucrats are probably concealing from the politicians, or that the politicians are too lazy to find, and you've already done the homework, and you've just made their job a heck of a lot easier. Now, if you're asking me, Glenn, if I'm going to go through all that work and help them fix their dumb budget problems and at least head off a tax increase, which is good, save public safety, which is good, and do their job for them, why don't I just run for government myself? And that's an excellent question, and I think that's one most people should start thinking about out there. But if you want to understand what's going on in local government, you have to be willing to dig into the budget. You have to be willing to dig into the itemized expenditures. And the value you're going to get in doing that is that at some point in time, when the next budget's being set, you're going to be able to provide tangible, practical, realistic information that gives them a pathway to save those cuts. And they may still say no, but now you've got your platform, whether it's yours or somebody else's, that they can run on to go in there and maybe get people who actually believe in math and helping the community instead of whatever clown show's going on right now. Regardless, this is a good effort and a good use of time, I believe, when you go in and deal with local government. But in order to do it, you have to be willing to show up, because, as I end every video, the future belongs to those who show up.